Bridle Gossip is an episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic that I've been thinking about since I reviewed the Season 2 train wreck known as Dragon Quest. And since I have it on record that Dragon Quest is currently my most hated episode of the whole show as I'm currently up to Season 3, it got me to wonder if I was too soft on Bridle Gossip. There are criticisms I hear towards this episode that I hear from other analysts, like, say, the key that Pinkie Pie is singing in. But there are also other criticisms that I feel are just simply not given enough scrutiny. So let's take a very close look at Bridle Gossip and try to really determine how this episode does. This episode starts with Twilight walking through Ponyville and she recognizes the place as being a ghost town. Everyone is hiding from a zebra whose name is Sakura. Already I had to ask a few questions. For starters, what does giving her glowing yellow eyes and a robe really do beyond make her more intimidating for us? I mean, it's possible that she's wearing it to provide some kind of shade from the sun, but at that point it's headcanon. And this is actually part of a big reason that I don't really like Season 1 of the show. Subtlety is practically non-existent. Her being a zebra already makes her plenty distinct from the ponies. It's like an over a barrel where the buffalo being buffalo was for some reason not enough to differentiate themselves from the Appaloosa settlers, and they instead also had to have Native American features and live in teepee tents. And this is all before the theme song even gets to play. Yeah, this will be fun. Twilight remarks that she thinks her friends all flipped out for no good reason, which is the seed of another problem that I'll have not too much later. Applejack remarks that it was about protecting her family, which if she does have legitimate reason to see Sakura as a threat, is fair. Let's just keep this in mind. Apple Bloom is a filly, so if you find someone you think is dangerous, you'll want to make sure your family, especially the youths, stay away from strangers. This is like one of the first things parents teach their children because you have no idea who anyone could possibly be like. So I can't really say that Applejack is without merit here. Though as it turns out, no pony knows what a zebra is, which tells me that they really don't know anything about Sakura, and they're just judging based on what they are and not who they are. And not just what they are, but also where they live. Applejack mentions that Sakura lives in the Everfree Forest, which is described as basically how forests work in the real world, and I'll admit I found this pretty funny. And a point in this episode's favor. Some people like to call attention to Friendship is Magic Part 2 in Ghostbusters, where we see creatures like manticores and Ursa Minors, which are definitely deadly, but both only acted the way they did when they were enraged. Whether it was Nightmare Moon or Snips and Snails, it's not really fair to say the Everfree Forest is very dangerous if you have to disturb the creatures there first. This episode also came before episodes like Stairmaster, Family Appreciation Day, and Spike at Your Service, where creatures like Timberwolves and cockatrices were shown to exist. So in reality, the Everfree Forest can't be that dangerous as long as you know where to travel. Twilight then asks the critical question, what exactly have you seen Sakura do? Where basically Rainbow Dash, Rarity, and Fluttershy still can be chalked up to Sakura biding her time, wondering why Ponyville is deserted. And Twilight, who is entirely rational, suggests that Sakura wants to shop, but can't since no one has to open their doors to her at all. Apple Bloom tries to agree with Twilight, though as we know, being a child means your vote is entirely meaningless. Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy harp Sakura digging on the ground, the latter even wondering if she's digging for innocent creatures. We're just gonna ignore Dragonshy, I guess, where Fluttershy fed limeworms to her birds, huh? Worm lives matter. Twilight then suggests that if anyone were to actually approach her, they find out the truth. And now that seed is beginning to sprout, because it's none of the main six who approach her, but Apple Bloom that does it. Given the fact that she's only a child, she'd either have to be very brave or very, very foolish to engage an adult zebra, even if she does turn out to be friendly. Because let's say Sakura wasn't. In the real world, odds are that'll be the last you'll ever see that person. And that's putting it mildly. If this episode wanted to speak on the importance of not judging someone by how they look, it should have been Twilight, an adult mayor, to do it. Instead of what she actually does, engaging her friends on this matter where she clearly is not going to get through to them. And this has to be my biggest problem with this episode. Kids aren't born to be racist towards others, with the main six barring Twilight arbitrary being. Instead, kids are taught to be racist. But kids also don't have the same level of agency as an adult for very obvious reasons. I'm counting the strike here because this continues to be a problem later in the episode as well. By now, we the audience also learned that Sakura, beyond being a zebra, isn't very different from the ponies that fear her. Some argue that the episode fails because it's never actually shown to us that Sakura isn't a threat, but when the matter here is just coming down to word of mouth and the main six hypocrisy being on full display, I'd argue that's not a relevant criticism here. And later in the episode, it's also explained that Sakura was just trying to shop and simply couldn't, which meant that yes, Twilight was right all along. Back to the conflict at hand, I find it weird how Applejack scooped up Apple Bloom and didn't budge an inch from where she was standing, so that Applejack could be touching the poison joke plant, but somehow Apple Bloom never did touch it. Yeah, that's an animation error if I have ever seen one. The main six used that encounter with Sakura to justify their xenophobia and talk down to Twilight like she was wrong all along. And Applejack actually has a leg to stand on now in telling Apple Bloom that she was foolish to wander off all by herself and chase an adult all alone. I still find Twilight's little soapbox over how her magic is real but curses aren't pretty funny though. Later that night, Twilight has a nightmare with the seeds of doubt being planted after their encounter. She then wakes up using her magic to pick up her brush before noticing then that her horn has been afflicted with spots and is now floppy. Some people use this moment in tandem with the Crystal Empire to say that the damage to one's horn prevents it from being able to practice magic. Can I just say I never understood this complaint? First off, no, it is not a plot hole. It has never been said in this episode that Twilight could not use magic after the poison joke took effect. She simply chose not to. Second off, it isn't fair to an older episode to use what happens later in the show against it. Season 1 is still establishing the rules of the universe. I'd expect more consistency and continuity to be kept in Season 2 and onward. And third, King Sarma's attack of shining armor was a specific curse for his horn. And the purpose of the curse was to hinder his magic. Poison joke is just a gag. Yes, Twilight called it a curse on her horn, but she was wrong. So no, this is not a plot hole. Then this episode gets weird. Twilight both believes that she was cursed, but also denounces curses in front of Spike when he shows the Supernatural's book to her. So does she believe in curses now or not? Seriously, Twilight seems to be a real flip-flop in this episode. Also, all of Twilight's friends are afflicted in some way, shape, or form. Except for Apple Bloom, who no one notices. And I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy seeing Pinkie Pie being unable to speak. Though all the afflictions and Spike's reaction to them actually got me to smile quite a bit. I especially love when he fails to come up with anything for Twilight and looks at the camera as if he's got nothing. Apple Bloom was once again ever more eager to head back into the Everfree Forest and to help fix this problem. And once again, all alone. You already know, and so is every other pony. At least this time, Applejack is hitching a ride on Apple Bloom, so she's not really going alone. Though being teeny tiny, she can't really do much, now can she? Apple Bloom, who's making her way to the Everfree Forest, is sought by Applejack, who tells her to turn back, but she refuses, saying she's the big sister now and leaves Applejack on a tree branch. Yeah, I just found this funny. You could honestly argue either or as far as whether or not this was really ethical or callous on Apple Bloom's part or not. But the way I see it, Apple Bloom was really sick of being bossed around, and she isn't kept there for very long either since Rainbow Dash scoops her up soon afterwards. The main six afterwards make their way to Sakura's hut as she's preparing a brew, and much like in Pinkie Pie's song earlier in the episode, it starts to sound like Sakura is ready to cook Apple Bloom up and eat them. Yeah, Shiloh's safety took a real backseat in this episode, huh? They break in, cause a ruckus at Sakura's home, and accuse her of cursing them all, and Apple Bloom is still nowhere to be seen until she is, and the truth finally comes out. There was never a curse. It was instead a warning about the blue leaves. The chanting and decor were just a part of Sakura's past, whether they were nursery rhymes or from where she used to live before traveling to where she lives now. The rhyming though? Nah, no explanation for that. And the brew was because Apple Bloom sought out for help with curing her sister and her friends from the ailment. Twilight's friends are still really rude though, if Rarity is any example to go by still calling her decor creepy, but they at least apologize, right? Well, only Twilight does. Yeah, despite for the longest time being the advocate for Sakura being misunderstood, she's also the only one to say that she was sorry for misjudging her. Meanwhile, none of her friends say a word despite being the ones who even ingrained a thought in Twilight's head and acting all high and mighty as if she was wrong for not blindly listening to them. They look guilty, sure, but the fact of the matter is that they more than anyone else should have been the ones who apologize. However, to Twilight's credit, her apology is very genuine and sincere sounding. I just wish that more was said about the main six breaking into Sakura's hut and even attacking her in some way, shape, or form, but oh well, nobody's perfect. To this episode's credit though, the moral is good and very well worded in that you should not judge someone by how they look but by who they are. All in all, yeah, this episode I was too kind to. I don't think this episode was gonna make it a disaster, and this episode is still closer to being good than to be bad, but for what it's worth, I think this episode is okay. Honestly, the only thing I would change is have it be Twilight that engages Sakura, not Apple Bloom. Had the writer done that, this episode could have been good. As is though, while it teaches a very good moral, it also suffers from very unfortunate implications. Please, for the love of God, don't let a child go unsupervised nearby an adult that you've never met before. You have no idea what could happen. Barring that, if you did want to do that, Applejack, her guardian, has to call that out. But yeah, those are my extra thoughts on Bridle Gossip. If interested, I reviewed every episode of Season 1 of this show, so click this video on the screen right now and watch it for yourself. And if there are other episodes you want me to look more in depth into, leave a comment below and I might actually get around to it. See you next time.